So I'm just taking apart whatever's left of this fan. I'm like, you know, before I actually get rid of it, might as well look at it. And I decided to take the motor apart. And this black stuff, this is actually, there was one of those spacers on the back, and that was just blown apart from me smashing it. And actually, it's probably a good thing I didn't decide to try and save this fan. I'm going to show you why in a minute. But first, you can see how thin that was just from the bend. It just ripped the metal. There's the sticker. I showed it in the other video, but there's a good picture. No brand or anything on the motor. Probably Yin Yang Electronics or something. Now, this is very dark, and this is all burnt. Like, this is just disintegrating. Little strings are just falling apart. Now, granted, yes, some of them were hit with a hammer, like right there it was hit. But the whole back of the motor wasn't caved in, just most of it. But this fan was not... After about the first minute of it running, once I turned it on, after about a minute of that, once I hit the first hit there, all the power was disconnected to the motor, and then it was actually unplugged then. I actually unplugged it. I did leave it plugged in when I was hitting with the hammer, but I was holding the hammer on the rubber, and it's got a plastic handle, and I was being careful not to hit anything directly except for the motor, which I knew was already disconnected. So here's the deal. This motor was not healthy. Obviously, you can see it needed oil, and the bushings are kind of scored a little bit. Actually, no, the bushings probably, this could have been saved. Mechanically, this motor was actually okay, other than just needing a cleaning and some oil. However, see, these windings look doesn't really look that bad on camera, but they're actually very dark. And it has a smell like these motors I've seen before that have pretty much burnt themselves up. And when I just pulled the back cover off, these just fell off. Look at the connection on those wires. It's black, and it's just, when I bend it, it just cracks apart. And I go over here to the thermal fuse. Just look at this. This is just black. This got very close to that fuse to go off. And look at those wires. They're black. They're not just a little discolored there. They're actually black. So it's a good thing I didn't save this fan. These wires are if I just bend them, I can hear. And the insulation here is just crumbling. So this motor's gotten very hot. Even this little spacer, what's left of it, looks like it's been a little warm before. So I'm gonna save the hardware from the motor. And here's the gear motor. I'm gonna take this apart in a minute. Here's the Chinaness again. So it's probably not a very safe fan, or definitely not the safest fan to keep. I'm gonna take this apart though, because somewhere in the body there should be a run capacitor, which I know is good, so I'm gonna hold on to that. It did work, but knowing that the motor was kinda sad, and also the laminations are coming apart, but that is most likely for me beating it. Everything's covered in oil too. Just this paper, look at this paper insert, it's just crumpling. It took no effort. I literally just pulled the motor cover off gently, and it just came off and it just ripped. You see the windings here for the different speeds and stuff. This is not a healthy motor. I'm sure this one's probably better inside, but because that one, synchronous motors like that, I think they're impedance protected. What that means is even if the rotor locks, it won't burn up. If I lock the rotor up in this motor, it would not burn up. They're very hot running motors to start with, so I'm just gonna try and get this apart a little more. Here's the other end bell. I just gently tapped on the hammer with a hammer just like 3 times or 4 times on the side, and it just came right out. And you can see, just look at that, the Chinaness is at it. You just see all these little ties here, and the insulation on the windings and stuff. I just run my finger over them, they just fall off. This takes no effort really at all. So it's probably, if I took it apart, which I would have to lubricate it and clean it up, especially because I can't see in this motor. It's a pretty well sealed motor, and I couldn't oil the back bearing, so I would have to take it apart, and I would also clean it because it was really stiff. I would definitely see this and I would not fix it. Even though it hasn't gotten quite warm enough to pop that thing, I'm not so sure if that was even touching the windings. This could have been floating off in left field over here, like that. And it did. This is definitely, this motor should, that fuse should have gone. This got very hot, and honestly, I wouldn't trust it. And I was actually going to give this fan, I was going to fix it up and give it to somebody for free. And they're going to give me like $5 for it. A fan. So I was going to give it, I told them I'd find a good one for them, and I would give them a good one. And I thought this would have been a decent fan, and it would have been. You know, it is cheap and modern. It was really not a terrible fan, but the blades are actually pretty nice, rigid. They got a decent pitch to them, and they have some weight behind them. But honestly, this is I wouldn't trust this ever again. So, yeah. I'm gonna take apart the little gear motor now. Okay, now take apart the gear motor. I can just tell just by the design of this, it's a very cheap and nasty little synchronous motor. This one was very easy to get apart. One, because it was already smashed and it was kind of loose. And two, it has these little tabs on it. See some grease in there. I'm gonna put the pieces in there. Yeah, you can see the rotor gear in the middle there is the one that was stripped. It's actually falling apart. Yeah. This little stamped steel gear here is very... This motor you can just tell is not very good quality. Although it has a couple metal gears, I'll give it that much. And these look like either nylon or Delrin, but probably not Delrin. If I had to guess, they're probably nylon. I don't think these cheap companies use Delrin gears. It's more the good quality motors. Yeah. Yeah, that gear's actually, it's got a metal insert, so I'm gonna give it that. I mean, it's got some nice designs, but yeah, I don't want to get the carpet all greasy. But definitely not too good. Let me get this, the pole pieces out here. Taking the pole pieces out. And I gotta say, one thing I do like, that's a very nice rotor. Very large. The gear here is just broken, and that's why it was broken, and the gear was stripped. That's why the oscillating grille barely worked. I bet the gear was not stripped like that. I think what the deal was is it was broken right there, which I've seen before, and that's why it would engage sometimes. Oh, that's not broken at all. I was wrong. This is normal. This is a little coupler, or a little coupling right there. The gear there was stripped. I mean, I crushed it, but it was stripped. As you can see, it obviously didn't work, and I didn't do anything to this. That's how I found it. And the gear was stripped, or it wasn't coupling with the rotor that well. I really should just go get needle nose pliers. Oh well, it's not worth it. And yeah, there you go. But the deal was I broke some of it. I didn't help it, but it was not good. And it would engage sometimes, and you put any stress on it, it would stop engaging, and they would try to engage. That's when I smashed it. This just rides on the shaft here. The shaft on these typically does not turn on these cheap Chinese ones. Yeah, that's all. This shaft is actually slightly bent. So, yeah. I know it didn't focus, but you can kind of see it. Here's the windings. The winding ain't coming out. I don't feel like touching it because it's all greasy. But you can see I tore it a little bit. It's just paper thin windings. It's actually just one winding. Yeah. There you go. That's garbage. I'm not even gonna bother recycling this one. I usually do, but I really don't care too much about this particular one. Usually I bring them over to the recycling center, and you know what? This garbage can we'll survive. Anyway, you know, I think we'll survive. I just throw one thing in the garbage. I really don't care right now. I'm not in the mood to bring it over to recycling in a million little pieces like this. So basically, I'm just gonna take this apart. I don't know how to do that. I can probably just crush it apart and just take the run cap out and then call it a day. That's all I really want out of it. That, and I took the cord off of it. As you can see, here's the hardware I'm going to keep, and everything else in here is history. Thanks for watching. Put it in a bag, and well, a couple other things, and I'm going to bring it over to the recycling center this weekend. So don't complain about me throwing things out in the garbage and filling up landfills. It'll be recycled. Thanks for watching.